The rain fell hard that evening, washing the dust from the quiet village road. An old woman, her gray hair tied neatly under a faded shawl, stood by her front porch, holding a small bowl of warm milk. From the shadows beneath the fence, two glowing amber eyes blinked, frightened, hungry, yet curious. She smiled gently, setting the bowl down. "There now, little one." "No need to be afraid," she whispered. That night, as thunder rolled across the valley, the old woman and the black stray kitten met for the first time, a meeting that would change both their lives forever. The storm had not ceased by morning, and the old woman found muddy paw prints on her doorstep. She chuckled softly, wrapping her cardigan tighter, and placed another bowl of milk outside. From behind the bushes, the same black shape appeared, cautious but drawn by warmth and kindness. Its fur glistened with raindrops, eyes sharp like shards of amber glass. "Poor thing," she said, kneeling slowly. "You must be starving." That day began a routine. Milk, leftovers, and gentle words shared through the open door. She called it midnight because it always came after sunset and vanished by dawn. Neighbors would pass by, amused by her devotion to the stray cat. But the woman simply smiled and said, "It keeps me company. That's enough." And indeed it did, sitting by her gate, guarding her silence like a shadow. Every night, midnight returned, larger, quieter, more graceful. Its movements were fluid, deliberate, almost regal. She noticed its paws were too large for a normal cat, but she didn't care. When it purred, the sound echoed deep, like distant thunder beneath fur. In her loneliness, the old woman found peace in that low, rumbling comfort. Morning sunlight warmed the porch where the old woman sat knitting. Beside her, midnight lay curled, tail flicking lazily across the wooden floor. The villagers began to talk about the size of her cat, about the gleam in its eyes. But she dismissed their whispers with a wave. "A cat's a cat. Love makes no difference." Her wrinkled hand reached out, stroking the creature's sleek black coat. One afternoon, a child passing by tossed a pebble at midnight, laughing. In an instant, the creature stood tall, ears flat, eyes burning bright. A deep growl rolled from its chest, freezing everyone in place. The old woman rushed forward, voice trembling but firm. "No, Midnight. He's just a boy." At her words, the creature stepped back, its gaze softening again, loyal, obedient, and calm. That night, she sat beside the fire, her heart heavy yet proud. She spoke softly to the creature that watched her from the shadows. "You protect me, don't you?" "Even when I don't ask." It blinked slowly in response, a silent vow only they understood. The house felt less empty that night, filled with quiet companionship and warmth. Weeks passed, and the old woman's garden bloomed with new life. She often spoke to Midnight as she watered the flowers, humming softly. But one morning, she found claw marks on the wooden fence, deep, wide, unnatural. Her neighbor warned her, "There's talk of a wild animal roaming nearby." She smiled faintly. If it were wild, it wouldn't share milk with me every night. That evening, she noticed Midnight returning later than usual. Its fur was streaked with mud, and something red glistened on its whiskers. She hesitated, then whispered, "You've been hunting, haven't you?" The creature looked away, tail swishing slowly like a guilty child. She sighed and patted its head. "Everyone has their nature, dear one. I have mine too." To forgive that night, lightning illuminated the porch, and for a split second, she saw it clearly. Its silhouette was too large, too powerful for any cat she knew. But when it rested its head on her lap, the fear melted away. To her, it was still Midnight, her companion, her comfort. Outside, the wind howled, but inside, only love spoke. By now, the villagers had grown uneasy. Livestock had gone missing, and strange tracks appeared near the stream. They came to her door, carrying torches, their voices low with suspicion. "Have you seen anything, Granny?" one asked, eyeing the shadows around her porch. She shook her head calmly. Only my cat. Harmless thing. When they left, she turned to Midnight, who stood behind her, silent as stone. The firelight caught its eyes, gold, bright, and sorrowful. You frightened them, she murmured, but I know your heart. It lowered its head, brushing against her hand. In that moment, she realized it understood every word she said. That night, she dreamt of a black panther walking beside her through moonlit woods. Its eyes were gentle, its steps careful not to crush the flowers beneath. When she woke, she found paw prints by her bedside. She only smiled, whispering, "You're no ordinary cat, are you?" But she didn't fear the truth. She cherished it. The seasons changed, and the old woman's health began to wane. Her hair silvered fully, her steps grew slower, but her spirit remained bright. Midnight never left her side, following her even into the orchard. Children peered from afar, watching the great dark shape move behind her. To them it was a monster. To her, a blessing. She began talking more to it than to people. At dawn, she'd sit on her porch and say, "Do you remember when you were small enough to fit in a basket?" It would blink, as if amused, tail wrapping gently around her feet. To her, those quiet mornings were a kind of eternity. Every heartbeat, every breath, shared with her unlikely friend. Once, a traveling hunter stopped by and noticed the creature in the shadows. "That's no cat, madam," he said grimly. "That's a puma." She met his gaze calmly. "It's my family," she replied. The hunter shook his head and left, muttering warnings under his breath. But she only smiled, stroking Midnight's thick fur. Family doesn't always fit our expectations. The sky turned dark one afternoon, clouds gathering like soldiers. She hurried to bring the laundry inside, coughing as the wind whipped around her. Midnight prowled near the gate, tail flicking anxiously, sensing danger. When thunder boomed, the creature growled, standing between her and the open field. "Shh," she whispered. "It's only thunder, my brave one." Suddenly, a tree branch cracked and fell near her feet. Before she could react, Midnight lunged, pushing her aside, saving her. Rain poured down as she fell to her knees, heart racing. The creature stood soaked, muscles trembling, eyes burning with fierce devotion. Tears mixed with rain on her face. "You'd risk yourself for me?" she whispered. That night, she made an extra bowl of food and lit 2 candles by the window. She prayed softly, not to God, but to fate, to let them stay together longer. In the flickering light, Midnight lay by her bed, breathing slow and deep. The room felt sacred, as if guarded by something ancient and kind. Outside, the storm finally passed, leaving only calm and gratitude behind. Weeks after the storm, the old woman began to feel weaker. The doctor came once and left shaking his head. "She's just tired of life," he said. But Midnight refused to leave her side, sleeping beside her every night. Sometimes she would wake to find it watching her quietly, protectively. "You know, don't you," she whispered, "that my time is near." She began writing letters to no one, notes filled with memories, of the day she found him, of the seasons they shared. She tucked them beneath a jar of milk on the porch. "Maybe someone will understand someday," she said softly. Midnight listened, eyes filled with silent sorrow. One morning, she couldn't rise from bed. The creature nudged her gently, letting out a low, trembling sound. Her thin hand reached out, brushing its fur one last time. "Promise me," she whispered, "you'll live free." Midnight lowered its head to her chest, listening to the last beat of her heart. The villagers found her days later, lying peacefully on her bed. Candles had melted into pools of wax, and a faint scent of flowers filled the air. They buried her under the oak tree behind her house, where she used to feed the cat. But none could explain the enormous paw prints found beside her grave. Some said they belonged to a wild beast. Others said it was her guardian. That night, as the moon rose high, a black shape appeared by her tomb. It lay down quietly, tail wrapped around the stone. Its golden eyes reflected the stars, unblinking, sorrowful. All night it stayed there, refusing to move, refusing to eat. And when dawn came, only silence remained, heavy, aching silence. The villagers began to leave offerings of food, but none were touched. Sometimes they heard a low, mournful sound echoing through the valley, a cry too deep for any cat, too broken for any monster. It was grief, wild and pure, echoing through the hills. The puma had lost the only soul that ever saw it as love. Months passed, and the legend grew. Travelers spoke of seeing a great black puma sitting on the hill at sunset. It never attacked, never approached. It only watched the village below. Children whispered, "That's Grandma's cat, still waiting for her." Their parents hushed them, though even they half believed it. Sometimes, during heavy rain, people saw paw prints near the old house. The windows still stood open, curtains swaying gently in the wind, as if the spirit of the woman still welcomed her loyal friend home. Inside, dust gathered, but the bowl on the porch was never moved, and beside it, faint claw marks carved the wood, eternal reminders of devotion. The villagers eventually began calling it the guardian of the old house. It frightened no one anymore. It simply existed, proud and alone. At dusk, it would lift its head toward the oak tree and roar softly, like a prayer. And though no one understood the sound, the heart behind it was clear. It was love, wordless, eternal, and wild. Years later, the house crumbled, vines reclaiming the porch. The world moved on, but stories never truly die. Wanderers who passed through claimed to feel watched, protected. Some swore they saw two figures under the oak, an old woman and a dark shape beside her, both silent, both at peace. One night, a young girl, lost and afraid, sought shelter near the ruins. She awoke to find a sleek black form watching over her, warm eyes glowing softly. It led her safely to the road at dawn, then vanished into mist. When she told the villagers, they smiled knowingly. "The guardian still keeps his promise," they said. And so, under that old oak tree, where love once lived and never left, the spirits of woman and beast remained bound by kindness, one who gave warmth, one who gave loyalty, both eternal in their devotion. The wind that passed through the valley carried their story softly, a reminder that love needs no words, no species, no end. Years turned into decades, yet the story of the old woman and her black cat lived on. Children grew up hearing the tale whispered beside their hearths on stormy nights. They said the puma still walked under the moonlight, its shadow long and graceful. Some believed it guarded travelers from harm, others said it searched for her soul. Either way, no one dared harm a black creature again in that valley. The oak tree became a place of quiet pilgrimage. Flowers, candles, and offerings appeared at its roots every full moon. Old villagers prayed for protection. The young came seeking courage or love. And sometimes they felt a warm breeze pass, gentle, like a hand on their cheek. They knew somehow that she was still watching. Far above, on the ridgeline, the puma kept its silent vigil, its fur now streaked with silver, its steps slower but still proud. Every night it gazed at the house below, as if waiting for her voice. Sometimes it would lie down and close its eyes to the wind, dreaming of milk, soft hands, and kindness that never judged. One autumn, a weary traveler came to the village. He was a writer, seeking stories buried in forgotten places. When he heard of the puma and the grandmother, curiosity lit his eyes. "An old woman who tamed the wild," he murmured. "That's a story worth keeping." He set out toward the hill as the sun dipped behind the clouds. The villagers warned him not to stay past dusk, but he laughed, notebook in hand, and pressed on. When night fell, the forest grew eerily quiet. Not even crickets sang. Then he saw it. two golden eyes watching from the trees. He froze, heart thundering, yet the gaze was not cruel, it was mourning. The puma stepped into the moonlight, enormous yet graceful. The man dropped to his knees, trembling, awed by its presence. For a long moment, neither moved, only the wind spoke. Then the beast turned away, padding toward the oak tree's glow, and the rider knew. He was not meant to follow, only to remember. The writer returned to the village at dawn, pale and shaken. He began to write feverishly, capturing every detail, every whisper. He titled it, "The Black Cat at Her Door." When it was published, readers wept, not for the woman's death, but for her kindness. The story spread far beyond the valley, reaching hearts across the world. People wrote letters, saying it reminded them of their own lost companions. Some said it taught them that love doesn't need understanding to be real. The writer himself never forgot the eyes in the dark, sorrowful, loyal, eternal. He returned to the village years later, older, seeking peace. At the oak tree, he left a single line carved into the bark. Love tames even the wild. The villagers never saw the puma again after that night, but sometimes they'd find paw prints near the writer's carving, as though the creature had read the words and understood. And in the hush of twilight, if one listened closely enough, you could almost hear a deep, gentle purr carried on the wind. Winter descended upon the valley with a heavy hush. Snow blanketed the ruins of the old house, hiding time beneath white silence. The oak tree stood solemn, its branches heavy with frost, but beneath it, the earth never froze. Always warm, always soft. The villagers said it was her love that kept it so. One cold night, a boy went missing in the forest. The search lasted until dawn, torches flickering against the snow. Then from the hill, they heard a single, haunting roar, long, deep, echoing. Moments later, they found the boy asleep under the oak tree, unharmed. Beside him, paw prints led into the darkness, then vanished. From that night on, no one doubted the legend's truth. Parents told their children, be kind to the small, the lost, the wild. Because kindness, they said, could live forever if given freely. And in the hush of winter, the valley seemed to listen and remember. Even the wind whispered her name through the snow. Generations passed, and the village grew into a small town. Yet the oak tree and the story were never forgotten. New roads were built, new houses rose, but none touched that sacred ground. Children still left milk by the roots every year on her birthday, and sometimes the bowl would be empty by morning. One dusk, a farmer repairing his fence saw a dark shape move in the distance. It was large, graceful, too large for any cat, too smooth for a shadow. He dropped his tools, heart racing, but the shape did not come closer. Instead, it sat upon the ridge, watching the sunset. Then it turned, vanishing into the golden light. The farmer told his neighbors, and they nodded knowingly. "The keeper still watches," they said. No one feared it anymore. Instead, they felt protected, like the valley itself was guarded by a promise made long ago. A promise between a woman and a beast who once shared a home. One summer, a curious little girl wandered too far from the village. She loved the stories of the guardian and wanted to see it herself. Deep in the woods, she lost her way, panic rising in her chest. Then, through the trees, she saw two golden eyes, calm and steady. Instead of fear, she felt safe. The puma stepped forward, massive yet gentle, lowering its head. The girl reached out, touching its fur, warm, soft, alive. It turned, walking slowly through the trees, guiding her toward the path. When they reached the clearing, it paused, looking back once. Then it vanished into the light like smoke at sunrise. When she told her parents, they cried, not from fear, but gratitude. They brought her to the oak tree, where she placed flowers and whispered thanks. From that day, she carried the story in her heart, never doubting its truth. And when she grew up, she taught her children the same lesson. Love without fear, and the wild will love you back. Years later, the village began a festival to honor the legend. They called it the Night of Midnight, in memory of the black cat. People dressed in black and carried candles through the streets. Children painted golden eyes on their lanterns, symbolizing watchful love. It was not a night of mourning, but of gratitude. At the end of the procession, they gathered beneath the oak tree. Stories were told, songs were sung, and milk was poured into the soil. They believed it nourished both the earth and the unseen spirit that guarded them. Some swore they felt a soft vibration in the ground, like a distant purr. Others said they saw two shadows pass across the moonlight. The tradition endured, binding the people to their past. They realized the story wasn't just about a woman and her cat. It was about compassion and the strength it leaves behind. And in the rustling leaves above them, something eternal stirred. The spirit of kindness never truly dies. It only changes shape. One night, a traveler stayed in the village inn. He knew nothing of the legend and laughed at such tales. But as he slept, he dreamt of walking through moonlit woods. Ahead of him walked a gray-haired woman and a black puma side by side. Neither looked back, yet he felt seen and forgiven. When he awoke, his heart ached with emotion he couldn't explain. He left his room before dawn and walked to the oak tree. The air was cool, the grass damp, and the silence absolute. Then faintly, he heard a sound, deep, gentle, like breathing. He fell to his knees, whispering, "I believe." He left a flower and a coin by the roots, though he didn't know why. Later, when he told the innkeeper, she only smiled. "They visit those who need reminding," she said softly, "not of fear, but of kindness." And the traveler carried that lesson for the rest of his life. Time, as always, moved on. The forest grew denser, the hill quieter, and the stories older. But one night, under a red moon, the villagers heard it again. A single, powerful roar that rolled through the valley like thunder. It was not a sound of anger. It was farewell. Those who heard it wept without knowing why. They said the guardian spirit had finally found rest. Some claimed they saw a black shape dissolve into starlight above the oak. Others saw only the calm of night, the peace of endings. But everyone agreed something sacred had passed. The next morning, the earth beneath the oak was warm once more, and in the soil, two sets of prints were found. One small and frail, one large and wild side by side. The villagers built a stone marker there, engraved with simple words, where love and wildness became one. Centuries later, the story is still told. The village has become a town, the oak now a monument. Yet candles still burn there each night, soft and steady. And when the wind moves through the branches, it carries a low hum, like the purr of something vast and unseen. Historians call it folklore, poets call it truth. But the people who live there know better. They say love once lived in that house, a love so pure it changed nature itself, a woman's heart that saw no monster, and a beast's soul that learned gentleness. Together, they became something eternal, and so, when the moonlight falls just right upon the oak's shadow, two figures can still be seen, one stooped, one sleek and black. They sit in silence, watching over the valley that remembers them. A promise fulfilled, a friendship beyond life and death, the black cat and the woman who called it home. Long after the monument was built, travelers continued to come. They came not seeking miracles but understanding. The caretakers of the oak said the air itself was gentler there. Birds sang softer, wind blew warmer, and even lost animals found their way home. The valley had learned to breathe kindness, as she once did. A teacher from the city brought her students to learn of the legend. She told them, "This story isn't about magic. It's about what love leaves behind." The children listened wide-eyed, clutching small candles in their hands. And when one child whispered, "Do you think they still see us?" the teacher smiled. They never stopped. That evening, a faint rumble echoed from the woods. The ground trembled softly, Not in fear, but in recognition. The villagers bowed their heads, whispering her name, and somewhere beyond sight, something vast purred in approval. For even centuries later, her kindness still echoed through hearts. A painter named Elias came to the valley, chasing a vision. He had heard of the story since childhood, but never believed it. Yet the first time he stood beneath the oak, his hands trembled. He felt as though unseen eyes were watching him, curious and kind. He decided to paint what he felt, not what he saw. Days turned to weeks as he worked, sleeping under the stars. Villagers brought him food and stories, each one more heartfelt than the last. When he unveiled his painting, silence fell. It showed the old woman, smiling, one hand on the head of a great black puma. But behind them, faintly painted, was light, a golden sunrise breaking through mist. Elias said quietly, "This isn't death. It's reunion." The people wept, not out of sorrow, but of hope. They hung the painting inside the chapel near the oak, and for the first time in years, prayers sounded like gratitude instead of grief. Even the wind outside seemed to whisper approval. One summer, lightning struck near the oak, splitting the sky in fury. Rain poured for days, threatening to flood the valley. People feared the tree might fall, that the past might be lost forever. But when the storm passed, the oak still stood strong, unbroken. Its roots deep, its trunk warm, as if protected by unseen strength. A group of villagers gathered to give thanks. Among them, a young man claimed he saw something during the storm. He said lightning had illuminated two figures beneath the tree, a woman with silver hair and a black shape shielding her from the rain. None doubted his words. They simply nodded in quiet awe. They rebuilt the fence, cleaned the soil, and replanted flowers. Every hand that touched the earth felt warmth pulse beneath. It was said that love had roots stronger than wood or stone, and though storms would come again, they could not break what was pure. Not even time could. A century later, a traveler from across the sea arrived at the valley. He brought with him a small black stone carved into a puma's shape. He placed it beneath the oak, whispering a prayer in a language none understood. But as he turned to leave, the wind shifted, warm, gentle, welcoming. The villagers who watched felt the air shimmer, like light through glass. He told them his grandmother had spoken of a dream, of a woman and a beast guarding her through illness years ago. "She told me to find them," he said softly. "Now I know I have." The villagers bowed, understanding more than words could say, for love, it seemed, traveled farther than oceans. That night, moonlight touched the stone, and it glowed faintly gold. Children gasped, whispering that midnight had returned. The elders smiled and said, "No, love simply found its way home." And the wind rustled the oak's leaves like soft laughter. Even legends, it seemed, could still receive gifts. A girl named Rena grew up tending to the oak and its stories. Her grandmother had once cared for the old house ruins before her. Every day, Rena fed stray cats in memory of the woman of legend. But one evening, she found a wounded black cub in the forest, its paw torn, its fur gleaming like onyx in moonlight. She took it home, cleaned its wounds, and fed it gently. Her grandmother gasped, whispering, "It looks just like the guardian." But Rena only smiled. "Then it's safe here, like he was." Days passed, and the cub grew, strong, sleek, too large for comfort. Yet when it purred, the house felt alive again. The villagers worried, warning Rena it might be dangerous. But she remembered the story and the love that began it. "Perhaps history repeats not as a curse," she said, "but as a promise." And when she looked into the cub's eyes, she saw understanding. The guardian spirit had returned, not to haunt, but to guide. As Rena's black cub grew, it became her constant shadow. She named it Echo, for it followed her everywhere, silent but present. Together, they walked the same paths the old woman once did. Under the same oak, by the same porch now rebuilt by Rena's hands. It was as if time itself had folded, letting love return home. One evening, Rena dreamed of the gray-haired woman. She was sitting by a fire, midnight curled beside her, smiling softly. "You've done well, child," the dream voice said. "Keep the kindness alive. That's all that matters." When Rena awoke, Echo was staring at her, eyes golden in the dark. The villagers soon began to believe the guardian had been reborn, but Rena shook her head, saying, "No, love simply takes new forms." She didn't seek fame, only to continue the quiet bond. And in that humble devotion, the valley found peace again. The legend lived not through fear, but through gentle repetition. Echo grew large, far larger than any cat, even larger than dogs. Yet he never harmed, never growled, never fled. Children played near him without fear, touching his fur like silk. Rena watched proudly, remembering the story that began it all. Once again, the wild and the human shared a heartbeat. At night, Echo would sit on the hill, watching the stars. Rena often joined him, resting her head against his shoulder. "Do you think they see us?" she whispered. Echo blinked slowly, like the guardian once did long ago. And she knew. They did. The valley became known as the place of gentle beasts. Travelers came not to hunt, but to heal. Even wild animals grew calmer there, as if bound by peace. Rena and Echo stood at the heart of it all, echoes of a love reborn. And above them, the oak tree swayed, whispering blessings through its leaves. One evening, during the annual festival, the moon rose blood-red. The villagers gathered beneath the oak, candles in hand. Rena stood at the front with Echo by her side, proud, silent, radiant. The wind grew still, as though the valley held its breath. Then faintly, a second shadow appeared beside Echo's, larger, older. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they saw it. A puma of light, translucent and golden, standing beside the living one. Next to it, a gray-haired woman, smiling through the glow. No one spoke. Even the torches seemed to burn without sound. It was as if the past had come home for one last embrace. Rena closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She whispered, "Thank you for starting all this." The spirits faded slowly into the light, leaving warmth behind. Echo purred softly, pressing his head against her hand. The valley wept with beauty, not sorrow, but gratitude. Years flowed on like quiet rivers. The oak still stood, and beneath it, 2 new stones were placed. One for Rena, when her time came, and one for Echo beside her. They said the 2 passed on the same night, beneath a silver moon. And when villagers came at dawn, they found paw prints and footprints intertwined. From then on, the valley was never touched by disaster. No fire, no flood, no war dared enter its borders. Animals flourished, crops grew green, and people lived simply and kindly. It was said the spirits of the guardians watched over all, and the oak's leaves shimmered like starlight whenever kindness was shown. Pilgrims still came from far away to pray under its branches. Not for fortune, not for fame, but for peace. They said the secret of the valley was simple, compassion, a love that began with a woman, a bowl of milk, and a hungry stranger, a love that time itself could not end. On quiet nights, when fog blankets the valley, the air hums faintly. If you listen closely, you can hear 2 heartbeats, one human, one wild. They blend together, steady and eternal, echoing through the hills. The villagers say it's the sound of the guardian and the grandmother, still walking side by side beneath unseen stars. The old house, now rebuilt into a small sanctuary, stands open for all. Inside, the painting of Elias hangs above the altar. Visitors light candles and whisper promises. To love, to protect, to forgive. And outside, the oak stands as it always has, leaves whispering to the moon. its roots deep, its heart unbroken. Because love, once given freely, never truly dies. It lives in wind and earth, in fur and flesh, in stories retold by kind voices. The black cat, the gray-haired woman, both are now beyond time, but their lesson remains as clear as starlight. To love without fear is to live forever. Many years later, the valley had changed once more. Roads curved where dirt paths once wound, and towers stood beyond the trees. Yet the oak tree remained untouched, ancient, dignified, alive. Children still brought milk in small bowls, not knowing why, only that it felt right. Kindness had become a tradition, inherited like breath itself. A historian visited, documenting the rituals and local beliefs. He scoffed gently, calling it superstition wrapped in sentiment. But that night, he dreamed of soft hands stroking a great black creature. When he awoke, tears stained his pillow, and peace filled his chest. He wrote simply in his journal, "Some truths live beyond proof." The next morning, he placed a single white flower beneath the oak. No one told him to. Something deep within him already knew. As he left, he heard the faintest rustle in the leaves, like a sigh. The valley was still speaking to those willing to listen, and love, quiet and unseen, continued its patient work. The forest that bordered the valley grew thick again. Wild creatures began to thrive, reclaiming forgotten paths. Foxes, deer, even wolves passed through the meadows without fear. People noticed that no predator ever harmed another creature within sight of the oak. It was as though peace had taken root deeper than instinct. A young biologist arrived, curious about the phenomenon. She set up cameras and studied the animal's behavior for months. What she found astonished her. Predators approached prey, then simply turned away. It defied science, yet filled her heart with awe. She began to wonder if emotion could ripple through time and alter nature itself. When she left, she wrote in her report, "The valley is alive with memory. Love has its own ecosystem." She took nothing but soil samples, leaving instead her favorite pendant beneath the tree. That night, the cameras recorded something impossible. A black puma walking gracefully through moonlight, and beside it, a silver-haired shadow. One spring morning, a boy named Leon woke in tears. He told his mother of a dream, of a lady who smelled like rain and tea. She said to feed the black cat, he whispered, because he's hungry again. His mother smiled, thinking it was a child's fancy, but left a bowl of milk by the oak. By dawn, the bowl was empty, and paw prints led into the mist. Leon kept returning every morning, leaving crumbs and kind words. Sometimes he felt watched, but not afraid, comforted. He spoke softly to the air, telling stories of school and friends. One day, he felt something brush against his leg, warm, gentle, gone in a blink. He knew then his dream wasn't just a dream. As he grew older, Leon never forgot the lesson of his vision. He became a teacher, telling children, kindness calls back the light. They listened, rapt, as he spoke of the cat who was not a cat, of the woman who fed love itself in a bowl of milk. And through his words, the legend found its newest voice. Time turned the old house into a museum, but it felt more like a home. Visitors walked through its quiet rooms and felt warmth rather than sorrow. A recording played, an actress reading from the woman's old letters. Feed the hungry. Forgive the wild. Love until it hurts. And beyond, people often wept without knowing why. In the final room, Elias's painting hung above a single candle. At night, staff swore they heard soft footfalls on the wooden floor. Sometimes the candle flickered when no wind blew, and faint purring filled the hall, deep, rhythmic, ancient. The curator smiled, saying softly, "They still walk among us." Outside, a garden bloomed where the porch once stood. Black roses grew naturally there, untouched by human hands. Visitors left offerings of milk and words written on folded paper. Each note a confession, a thank you, a promise. And every dawn, the papers were gone, carried it seemed by unseen paws. One night, a storm swept over the valley again. Lightning struck the hilltop, and thunder cracked like the roar of a beast. People feared for the oak, praying it would stand, but as the wind howled, something miraculous happened. The air filled with the sound of purring louder than the storm. Windows rattled, but none broke. Roofs trembled, but none fell. The villagers stood in awe as a warm gust passed through their homes. The sound rose, filling every heart with calm, then faded into silence. When the storm ended, the valley was untouched, not a branch broken. At sunrise, a new carving was found on the oak's trunk. Still here, children ran through the fields, laughing, shouting the words. The elders smiled, tears shining in their eyes. The guardian had spoken once more, not with teeth, but tenderness. It was proof that love, once planted, never stops growing. Even the storm had bowed to its strength. A woman named Asha traveled across the world to see the valley. She had lost everything, her home, her family, her will to keep living. She came seeking nothing but silence, but found something else. The oak stood before her, golden in morning light, as if waiting. She fell to her knees and wept without restraint. Through tears she whispered, "If love can survive death, let it find me too." A breeze lifted her hair, carrying the scent of earth and rain. When she opened her eyes, she swore she saw a gray shadow beside her, a woman's outline, smiling softly, hand outstretched. At her feet, 2 paw prints appeared in the soil, then vanished. She left the valley renewed, her grief transformed into peace. Later, she became a healer, traveling from place to place, helping others. When people asked how she found the strength, she only said, "I met someone who taught me love never leaves. It just changes form." And the valley, in its quiet grace, kept changing lives the same way. Generations passed, and the people of the valley thrived. They built schools, homes, and gardens, but never over the oak. Each new leader swore an oath beneath its shade, to serve kindly, to protect life. Kindness had become the valley's law, as natural as breathing, and misfortune, it seemed, forgot how to find them. One elder began teaching the young the song of the guardian. It was said the melody came to him in a dream. The tune was soft, low, and steady, like the sound of purring. Every time the children sang it, the wind joined in, turning the song into something living, larger than sound. The elder told them, "The woman is gone, the puma too, but their spirit remains." And when the children asked where, he tapped his heart. "Here," he said. "They live wherever love is stronger than fear." And in that simple truth, the legend took root once more. Not as myth, but as a way of life. One rare night, every star in the sky seemed to burn brighter. The villagers gathered, sensing something sacred. The oak glowed faintly silver, as though moonlight flowed from within. And from the hill beyond, 2 lights appeared, one golden, one pale. They moved slowly, side by side toward the oak. The crowd fell silent, watching in reverence. When the lights reached the tree, they merged into one. A soft hum filled the valley, vibrating through every leaf and stone. Then, like embers rising from a dying fire, the light drifted upward. 2 forms, woman and puma, ascending into the starlit sky. When dawn came, the villagers found a single feather and a paw print in the dirt. They understood it was not goodbye, but transformation. The guardian and the grandmother had become part of the heavens. From then on, 2 stars always shone above the valley, side by side, guiding travelers home as they always had. Centuries turned the valley into legend, the oak into myth. But travelers still came, following the pull of something unseen. The old tree stood, its roots vast and intertwined with the forest itself. Animals gathered beneath it without fear, foxes, deer, even panthers. It had become the heart of a living cathedral. An archaeologist unearthed the foundation of the old woman's house. Inside, she found a rusted bowl, still intact beneath the soil. When she touched it, a warmth spread through her hand, soft as breath. She placed it back gently, whispering, "This belongs to love." Then she planted wildflowers around it and left it undisturbed. That night, her campfire flickered, and she heard a faint purr in the dark. Not threatening, but comforting. A lullaby from another time. She smiled and closed her eyes beneath the stars. For even science, faced with such tenderness, could only bow in silence. Some truths, she realized, need no explanation, only belief. And so the valley remained, a cradle of peace, a testament of love. Seasons changed, generations passed, yet the story never faded. The woman and the puma became symbols of all that endures, compassion without condition, friendship without words, and the courage to love what others fear. At night, when the world grows still and the moon hangs low, you can still see them. Faint, glowing, eternal. A gray-haired figure, gentle as dawn, and beside her, a great black shape. They walk through mist and moonlight, forever side by side. Their bond no longer bound by life, but by eternity. The oak tree stands as their home, its roots deep in memory, its branches touching the sky where their souls now dwell. And every time a hand offers kindness to a stray or a stranger, a whisper stirs through the leaves, soft as a sigh. Love never ends, it only finds new doors,